Welcome to Alex Academy. This is Chapter 1, Before History of Traditions and Encounters. In this video, we'll review the main points of the chapter. And this outline I'm using right here actually comes from the textbook, so I totally encourage you to check it out, link in description. Also, one final note about highlighting. Yellow means information that is good to know, and green represents the key terms and vocabulary, and these are essential. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing is the evolution of Homo sapiens. So Homo sapiens are basically what we are today. Anthropologists, which are basically historians who study how people came about, think that humans evolved in three phases. So the first was the Australopithecus, right here. And basically they think that we all come from East Africa, so that's also known as the out of Africa theory. After that, they evolved to Homo erectus, which are these slightly more sophisticated humans. And finally, they evolved to Homo sapiens, basically what we are today. So anthropologists basically note that Homo sapiens have a really developed brain, so they have frontal cortexes and stuff like that. And that allowed them to spread eventually through the Ice Age land bridges. So for example, the Bering Strait you always hear about, that was one of the Ice Age land bridges. And also, Homo sapiens were able to adapt to their natural environment. They used knives, spears, bows, arrows, basically stuff they could use to defend themselves and also attack other things so they could survive. So number 2 is Paleolithic Society, and this is really important. Basically, Paleolithic means the Old Stone Age. So basically the old part of the Stone Age. And in the Paleolithic Society, most of the people, they lived in egalitarian existence. What egalitarian means is everybody is equal. So there wasn't this wealth stratification. No one was really richer than other people. Land was just commonly owned. And basically, they participated in big game hunting with special tools and tactics. And they sometimes even domesticated animals and followed them around. And this is known as pastoralism. So that was a really big deal. Afterwards, of course, they constructed many languages. That's how we have so many different languages today. And also important to them were Venus figurines. These were basically nude clay models that they constructed, and it represented fertility of the women. So these were really central to their culture. And they also had cave paintings of animals. And this is sort of one of the few last remaining things we get from Paleolithic peoples. And then after Paleolithic was Neolithic, and this is really simply defined as the new Stone Age. Basically, in this era, we had refined tools and agriculture, so it was a little bit different. And in this phase, Neolithic women began systematic cultivation of plants. So, for example, in Mesopotamia, the Middle East, they were able to start cultivating the modern seed plants such as wheat and barley. Also, Neolithic man began to domesticate animals. So instead of just going out and hunting, they could actually domesticate, like, say, goats or something, and then they would herd those around, and then they could stay more stationary. And women before, of course, they would gather stuff, but now they were able to actually just stay in one place and farm. So women actually invented farming, and that's really important to understand. Also, agriculture emerged independently in several parts of the world. So there were many nodes sort of this development. So you had some in the Middle East, Mesopotamia. You also had some in Africa, and you had some in China. And all these developed independently, and they developed different ones. For example, there was millet and rice in China, and then in Africa there was sorghum, and then of course wheat and barley in the Middle East. And eventually these would all start mixing, but at the beginning it was all independent. And the big takeaway really is that agricultural work is definitely more work than hunting gathering, because you have to put in the work early. But as a result, you can get steady large supplies of food. Versus hunting, you're not always guaranteed food. Some days you could come home empty-handed. Eventually, with agriculture, which is a very big deal, cities such as Jericho in modern-day Israel were able to rise. Jericho was the earliest known Neolithic village. And there were also specializations of labor. So there's one Neolithic site, Catalhuyuk. Oh man, I mispronounced that really bad. But that's in modern-day Turkey, and that basically just disappeared today. And you sort of just see these old Paleolithic and Neolithic villages, and you can just really see how they all differed from each other and just how they were also similar in some regards, such as their culture. And eventually, urban life was able to emerge, so cities larger and more complex than villages. You see, like New York City today, way bigger than, say, the original African villages. Just you can really just see how human race has advanced with agriculture and the agricultural revolution. Eventually, the earlier cities were in the valley of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, very important to note. And this is in the Middle East. This is like modern day Iraq and Syria. And very important to note right here is 3500 BC or 3500 BCE. And this is really important because this is really like the beginning of the history and world history that you will learn. Well, this has been Chapter 1 Before History, Traditions and Encounters. Thanks for watching and hope to see you in the next one.